Hey Seekers, my name is Miss Maddie and I'm going to be teaching our lesson today. If you watched lesson 1 yesterday, Miss Alicia told us about how the prophets told us about Jesus coming long before he was ever born. So the point of the lesson yesterday was Jesus came as God promised. So we're going to go on today and see what Jesus did once he was here on earth. Okay, so our verse for this week, as Miss Alicia said yesterday, is "You will find me when you search for me," and that's Jeremiah 29:13. So, Miss Alicia told us about archaeologists yesterday. Think about what an archaeologist is. They're someone that uses tools to dig in the ground and find things like pots or shoes or anything that people used to use. And with those artifacts, those things that archaeologists find, we learn a little bit more about what people used to be like, what their lives were like. So think about what kind of tools you would need. What would you need if you were digging in the ground, if you were finding old things? Pause it and talk with your parents. What would you need if you were an archaeologist? So if you're an archaeologist, you might need a flashlight, you might need a brush, you might need lots of different shovels. What else did you say that I forgot? So in our story today, we're going to learn about a blind man and how Jesus helped him out. So what I want you to do first, with parent permission, is I want you to see what it would be like if you were blind. What I would like you to do, if you have parent permission, is try to get toothpaste on your toothbrush with a blindfold over your eyes. So take a second and pause and then come right back and we're gonna see how the blind man does. Okay, so how did that activity go? Did you make a big mess on your toothbrush? Did you get toothpaste all over your hands and finger? Did the toothbrush actually make it to your mouth? Probably not. If I tried this, I would not do too hot. So basically what we're trying to see is that it's very difficult. Some people don't have the ability to see, and that makes it really hard for them to live their day-to-day life. Especially before the technology that we have now. A blind person back in Jesus' time wouldn't have the resources, and they would basically be beggars. They would be relying on the kindness of other people to get the food and the water and the shelter that they need. And that's what we're going to see Jesus provide in a miraculous way for this blind man today. So we're also going to see some unusual materials that Jesus used. In this bag is a bunch of dirt from my garden. We're going to see how Jesus uses some dirt. And we're going to see him use some water. And if I were to add some water to this baggie, what is it going to make? It's going to make some mud. So we're going to see what Jesus uses with this mud. So pay attention while you're listening to this story and see how Jesus uses mud when he's working with this blind man. All right, so God spoke to the prophets and told them about the things that would happen when his promised son came to earth. So what is a prophet? Have you ever heard that word before used in Sunday school or maybe GAs or RAs? A prophet is someone that God spoke to, and the prophet's job was to get that message to the people of Israel. So they were very important. Especially before Jesus came, this was the way that God communicated to his people, was through the prophets. So the prophets wrote that God's promised Messiah would perform miracles such as healing people who were blind, deaf, and unable to walk. After Jesus grew up and began his ministry, he did everything God had said that he would do. One day, Jesus was walking in Jerusalem. He passed by a man who had been blind since he was born. Jesus spat on the ground and he made a bit of mud. He spread the mud on the blind man's eyes and then said, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam." Can you say that word, Siloam? That's not something that we see every day. The blind man went to the pool and did what Jesus said. Then he could see. When he came back, the people who had seen him when he was blind asked, "Isn't he the one who used to beg for money?" Some thought he was, and some thought he wasn't. "I'm the one," the man said. When the people asked how he could now see, he told them what the man named Jesus had done. The people took the man to the Pharisees. Have you heard about the Pharisees before? Say the word Pharisee. It's kind of a cool word. A Pharisee is someone that was a very important religious leader in the day. However, they were not really great leaders. They loved the rules so much that they let their love of God kind of drop off. So they cared more about being right and doing the right thing rather than loving God. And so they were kind of mean people. So the Pharisees asked how he had been healed. The man told them the same thing about Jesus. The Pharisees couldn't believe it. They asked the man's parents what happened. The parents would only say, "Yes, this is our son. Yes, he was born blind. We don't know why he can see now. Ask him." They knew the Jewish authorities did not allow people in the synagogue who believed Jesus was God's son. Later, Jesus found the man who had been blind and asked him, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" That was a name Jesus often used for himself. "Who is he? I want to believe in him," the man replied. Jesus answered, "You have seen him. He is speaking to you now." "I believe, Lord," the man exclaimed, and worshiped Jesus. So how was that mud used in our Bible story today? Pause and talk with your parents. How was the mud used in the story? So the mud was not magic. There is not something in the dirt or the water that created the mud that healed the man. It wasn't magic. Jesus had the power that God promised that he would. And Jesus used the mud that healed the man's eyes. This was all about Jesus, nothing that the blind man did or the mud that was on his eyes. Jesus showed he had the power to perform miracles that God performed in the Old Testament. And Jesus still had the power that God promised. So let's do a few review questions. They're going to pop up on your screen, and I want you to pause and talk about them with your parent as you look at them. Where was Jesus when he saw the blind man? What city was he in? What did Jesus put on the blind man's eyes? Where did the man go to wash his eyes off? And the last one, I want you to fill in the blank with a word. Jesus has the blank God promised. So talk about those questions and make sure that when the video is over that you go to the website and answer those same questions. And if you answer days 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you will get a t-shirt at the very end of the week. So make sure you answer those questions, but don't go away yet. All right, so we talked about one thing that Jesus did, one miracle that he performed that is something that we cannot do. Sure, doctors can make sure your eyes and the rest of your body are healthy, but they can't take you from blind to seeing. Only Jesus and God with his power can do that. So let's think of a few other things. Can either people and God do them or only God do them? So I want you to stand up behind your chair, at your computer, wherever you are, and I want you to stand in place. And what we're going to do is I'm going to say a statement. And what I want you to do is, if it is something that God can do, then I want you to step this direction. If it's something that people and God can do, I want you to step this direction. So, all right, so think about this statement. Who can make the sun rise? Can only God do that, or can people and God do that? Take a step. If you step this way, you are right. Give yourself a pat on the back. All right, think about this. Who can water plants? Can only God do that, or can people and God do that? Take your step. If you step this way, you are right. I can take my garden hose and water my plants, and God can make it rain. So that's something that both of us can do. Think about this. Who can make water? If you step this way, you are right. Only God can form those hydrogen and oxygen molecules and form water. All right. Who can cause a volcano to erupt? If you stepped this way towards only God, you are correct. And last one, who can comfort others? Go ahead and think about it and take your step. If you step this way, you are correct. Your mama can give you a big old hug if you're upset, and then God can comfort you as well when you're walking through difficulties. All right, so let's review what we learned today. So I have these little baggies, and you can tell they are so hard to see. It looks a little muddy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Q-tip, kind of like an archaeologist would do, and I'm going to try to clean it off ever so gently so I don't ruin my artifact. And I'm going to see what the message is below it. So our message on this little baggie is God can do things people cannot do. So yesterday's lesson was about how God's told the prophets that Jesus was going to be born, and he actually did it. God sent his son so that we could have a savior. He sent his son, and he was born to be our Messiah. God can do things that people cannot do. So let's see what our next message is. Our next message says, Jesus has the power that God promised. We saw in our story today that Jesus healed a blind man with his spit and mud. I don't recommend you do that at home. Your eye doctor and your mom will probably not be very happy about that. So let's see what else we learned today in our story. Jesus' power is not a trick or magic. There is nothing magical about this. This is God's power, and it's God's promises. Let's see what our last message is. And lastly, we learned that Jesus healed the man born blind. So I don't know what kind of problem that you have right now. I don't know what really difficult thing might be going on in your life. He is with you in your struggles. He is with you in the hard times. He is not going to forget about you. And if he says he is going to show up for you, he means it. Jesus is someone that we can trust with our entire lives, and he is worthy of our lives and service to him. All right, so one last thing to review what we learned. So this is our dig site. Yesterday we learned Jesus is the Son God promised. So let's see what we see on day 2 right here. It says Jesus has the power God promised. So don't forget to come back to the website, answer day 2 questions, and then come back tomorrow for day 3.